Yeah, well, here we go. Here's what we ended up with. And I am headed out to my building to work on my 46 size U-CANDO today. This type of weather gives me a little more time to work on my airplanes. So I don't mind it so much. I'm headed out to my building to work on my U-CANDO, and here in just a minute I'll get started. Alright, here we are. Alright, here we go. Already got my building heating up. It was a little chilly, so I got my heaters going. And here's my 46 size U-CANDO. What I got done, I got to work on it a little bit yesterday. And I will get in the book and see what to do next, and I'll get started in just a minute. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I tried to get a decent camera angle. I'm going to start working on the rudder and stuff, and it's and the tail wheel. So I was trying to get there at the back of the plane where you get an idea of what I'm doing. So let me see if I can get a little better camera angle. Oh God, there. It's really hard to get the camera in a real good spot to see everything. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. And I can zoom in as we go and zoom out. Okay. You lower it down just a little bit. I'm getting close. Alright. That's not too bad. Show my hands here. Okay. That's not bad. Now the book, let me get my glasses here. Alright. Looks like the next step cut a slot in the rear fuselage for the tail wheel assembly. And I'll tell you what. Let's see if this is going to line up. Well, I guess this type of tail assembly will work just fine. I've got a little different type. Let me see what they've got here. Okay, there it is. Real simple. And see, they usually tell you to cut a slot for it, but there's usually already a slot for it. And this one there isn't. That is unusual. Okay. Yeah, I need to figure out the placement. See if they give you any idea on the placement. Okay, well, they really don't give you much of an idea, but this little band piece will actually go at about the right level with that edge. Usually, with it hanging with pressure on it, it'll go right even with the bottom of the fuselage. So that's not too bad. So I could probably go ahead and expand this hole down to accommodate that. Now in this particular spot I'm going to do better with a sharper knife. Because what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to take this slot that they gave you here, and I'm wanting to go ahead and put it down a little further. I've got a real sharp razor blade here, so I'm not going to have to put a whole lot of pressure on it. Or I shouldn't have to. Okay, there it goes. Okay, now I don't want it to go to the side or anything, and I really don't need much more than that. I do need to go ahead and make it a little deeper. Okay, here we go. Okay. It's real hard to keep these hobby knives from pulling the little blades out. And sometimes I tighten them with a pair of pliers or something a little bit to get them a little tighter. Especially when I'm doing something like this and it's going to stick. Just take a little pair of pliers and I just give them just a little bit more. They'll usually give you a little better hold. Alright, well let's see. I've got my slot cut just a little bit there. That's going to line up with the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and just see if this will go in there. Well, it acts like it probably will. My slot needs to go down a little further. And you can't really see this. My slot's starting to go off to the side. I'm going to have to kind of try to straighten it up. It shouldn't be hard with a real sharp knife. There it is. And I go down just a little bit further. Now, even though you're kind of splitting the back of the fuselage here, with the glue from the CA hinges and then the epoxy from this piece, you're still going to have quite a bit of strength. It's really going to glue it together. Okay. Okay. I've got that slot cut down a little further. And then go ahead and try to fit my little hinge piece. And again, I want that bend to be right at the bottom there. I'm getting close to having it in the right place, but I'm not quite there. It needs to go down just a hair more. Like I said, don't worry about splitting this. The glue will actually really give this a lot of strength back here. So I need to go down just a touch more. It's really almost going to be all the way at the bottom. Okay. I just want that bend, with the weight on this hinge, I want that bend to be right at the bottom of the fuselage. Is where I'm wanting that to be. That's what I'm trying to get. And I'm getting awful close. And sometimes it helps, of course, to look at the book and look at their placement. That's pretty close on the test fit. Now I need to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and cut a few more of my CA hinges, and then I'll go ahead and I'll clean out my slots in my rudder. To make sure that they will accept my CA hinges. And then I'll probably kind of test fit that up, and I will mark right where that post off of that tail wheel assembly hits. When I get that marked, I need to cut a little slot. They tell you to use a little sharpened tube, which is a really good idea. And I don't believe I have anything like that. I'll have to see. I usually just trim it out with a hobby knife. But anyway, I'm opening my slots up so they'll accept my CA hinges, and I may have 3 left. I'll have to check. I'm going to have to make a few more CA hinges anyway. I just cut half of my sheet before. Now, be real careful doing what I'm doing here. When you're pulling a hobby knife, a real sharp hobby knife, and you're really putting some pressure through it to cut through wood, and you're pulling it toward you, if that slices out the side, which with a real sharp knife it's real possible, I'd hit myself right in the chest. And I've actually done something similar to that before. I didn't really hurt myself, but I could have. But I've seen a buddy do that pretty bad once. He didn't really hurt himself, but he could have. So, as a rule, I try to, especially on stuff like this, and it's a little harder, but I try to point the blade away from me. That way, if it cuts out the side or something, the pressure that I'm putting on it will go away from me. And it's pretty hard to think of that all the time. But if you do, you might save yourself a little grief. Okay, here we go. I'm just opening up my slots, making sure that it'll accept my CA hinges, which most of these wouldn't. Most of these were clogged up. I don't know if they get a little glue in them or they don't cut them all the way or what. But and you have to, sometimes you have to work on them and go through them several times. See, that one took several times to get opened up to where it would accept a hinge. And of course, make sure, and I had one the other night, my hobby knife blade was kind of bent on the end. And is what that'll do, that'll really mess up your hinges. It'll go in and it'll go to the side, and I mean, you could get by with it, but really make sure you got a nice sharp, well, I say sharp, sometimes a dull one works a little better, just depends. Make sure you got a nice straight blade and it's working well for you, and make sure you get it to go in the actual slot. And you're just expanding on their slot instead of making a new hole. There we go. Okay, now all those are opened up, and let me see, I had a few CA hinges cut. I need to cut a couple more, it looks like. Here's my little sheet that I made, that I'm cutting them out of. So I'm just going to cut a few more, and I don't always cut them all up. The reason being is a lot of times this sheet they give you is quite a bit more than you actually need. And I don't cut them all up because that little piece I throw in my box to take with me or for another airplane, and it's just easier to keep track of than these little things here. Now I'm going to go ahead and crop my edges on these so they'll go in easier. And then I'll go ahead and of course mark my middles, mark my centers on them. Now, I actually made a few more than I need. I will end up needing some on the elevator here in a minute. I'll probably have to cut some more, but it's probably going to be all I'm going to need there. Go ahead and cut a few of these out.
Best country with a detailed rock and real good hand. You can ride the Johnson.
If you handle these little hinges too much, you'll find they'll start to fray on you. It really doesn't hurt anything. Just try not to handle them much more than you have to, because they will kind of start to, what I call, fray out. They just look like a bunch of little hairs coming off of them, and they really, it doesn't hurt anything. But I just try not to handle them a whole lot more than I need to. Now I'm just marking the centers approximately on them. I know where to put my T-pins at. Okay, it looks like I'm going to need 3 of them for this. Go ahead and put those up. I'm going to stick 3 of them in it and kind of test fit it. I'll go ahead and slide them in here. approximately where I think they go. And then I'll put my T-pins in. Sometimes I put my T-pins in before I slide them up, but it makes it harder to hold your hinge when you put your T-pin in. See, that one's really tight. I'm going to have to go ahead and go through that one again. Sometimes you really have to open these holes up to make them accept those hinges. And of course here in a minute I'm going to have to make the little slot for that and also the hole for the tail wheel assembly. And I really don't like these type of tail wheels, but on the smaller airplanes they work fine. I really haven't had any problem with them. I don't know why I don't like them. They make a lot better tail wheel setups, a lot better ones. But like I said, on the smaller planes they work just fine, and that's what matters. Okay, let me find my T-pins here. And of course, I pushed my CA hinges up to my center mark on there. And then the T-pins are meant to hold them. When you're pushing them up on there, they'll push in further, and well, without the mark you wouldn't be able to tell where they were. You really want them pretty well centered, and that's what the T-pins are for. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and test fit it. That's all I got to do is turn my wheel to the side. That gets that little shaft out of the way. And I'm going to very carefully try to get it up in those slots. Okay. And usually you just wiggle it back and forth a little bit. Kind of work it, and it'll go ahead and go in if your slots are slotted good enough. Okay, that's pretty close. Now I seen a video on YouTube the other night that was asking about the distance right here on the rudder, and I really leave almost nothing there. I really do. Very, very small amount is what I leave. I'm going to go ahead and push this back out a ways so I can mark where my tail wheel piece goes. Okay, and also I want to push that down a little bit because I want very little. I'll leave very little there. I mean, I leave probably enough to fit a couple pieces of paper at most. Probably a 1/16 most of the time. And that's what I leave. Okay, so here we go. I can go ahead and I can mark where my tail wheel assembly is going to go there. And also where the little shaft is going to go, where I'm going to have to drill my hole. So I usually use a pencil. I've got a better pencil here somewhere. I know exactly what I've done with it. I'll go ahead and sharpen this one up a little bit. It takes a pretty good point on a pencil to do any good on these, to mark. And a lot of people use little markers and stuff. And that works just fine. And a lot of the ones that they use are real easy to wipe off and stuff, and they work pretty good. I just use a pencil and I sharpen it fairly sharp. And that's what I use to mark things with. It's easy to remove later. Okay, now I need to mark where my hole needs to be drilled. Okay, so I got a good idea where that needs to be drilled at and everything, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it back off there. And my hole needs to be drilled right there. I'll see what they say, what size you're supposed to drill. They're saying a 1/8 hole. So I'm going to go ahead and find a 1/8 drill bit. Which I don't have in this particular set. Doesn't mean anything. I've got several sets. I buy these little cheap drill bit sets, and a lot of things, the cheap sets don't work that good. But for hobbies, really the cheap sets are great. And some of these will actually fit into my little Ryobi drill. They have the little, they're made to chuck up, and that'll work really great. This is handy. Now I'm going to have to try to drill that in the center here and fairly straight. That's going to be fairly hard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and push my bit into the wood a little bit. This is really soft wood. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start with a pretty small drill bit. This is very small, probably 3/32. I'm going to start with it because it would be really hard to locate that hole with the larger one. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to try to drill it straight that way. I'm just going to start it there. And then I'm also going to try to drill it straight this way, and the reason being is that way it'll have as much strength as it can. It'll be right in the middle of the wood. Do just a very small amount at a time to try to keep it real accurate. Really, all your strength here on your tail wheel is right here. So try to do a good job. Okay, I went through the other side. I'm going to go ahead and see how close my hole size is. It's actually really close. The smaller one is just fine. You see, they tell you to go a little bigger, quite a bit bigger. This is a huge bit. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go a smaller hole, and then I'm going to ream it out a little. It'll make for a tighter fit. It won't allow for me to put as much glue in there, but it really doesn't matter. And there it is. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out how to make this little section out here. And I really think I can just take a sharp razor knife, find my other razor knife, and start it by just cutting this little bit of a hump off. And that's working. Okay. Okay. And once I get this, the covering, and I get that little high point taken off, I'll probably try to do it with a drill bit or something. I really like these sharp blades, these X11s. They're quite a bit sharper than the regular blades. And they're quite a bit more expensive, but they really do help. Things like this, they really make it a little easier. And I'm going to try to take a drill bit, and I'm going to try to just lay it down on this edge and kind of bore it out. And it's kind of working, but it will walk off to the side and damage stuff if you don't watch it. I'm going to put my thumb there. It is actually working. I'm trying to make my groove. For my little hinge piece. I'm not really sure exactly how much I'm going to need, so I'm going to go ahead and fit this up on there while I'm doing it and try to get an idea of what I'm going to actually need. Should be pretty easy to go ahead and align my CA hinges out and push it on there. And it seems like an extra step, but this type of test fitting and doing no more than you need to do, just like that, the hole for that tail wheel piece, is kind of what makes a really nice fit and finish at the end. If you really take your time to fit stuff up and see what it might need, instead of just going by the book or whatever. And fitting up pretty tight. Okay, there it is. That has to actually clear that. And that has to clear this. And then it has to be able to push in far enough to make very little hinge there. So I'm really, really close. I could go just maybe a hair more, and that would be perfect. I'm actually considering taking just a little bit, after I get through with this cut, I'll probably put just a little bit of CA on the edge of that wood to make it real hard in that hinge. But I need to go just a hair more to make it fit that just right. And this is working really well. Only exception is I have to really hold my finger to the side of it here to make it where it doesn't crawl over that end. I'm going to go ahead and get a little more depth there. Okay, you need to go to this side of here. And there it is. There's my little spot that'll allow this little hinge to go in. Okay. Now, I need to go ahead and glue these. And I actually am going to take this 1/8 inch bit and I'm going to start this hole that this end goes in. And the reason I'm going to do that is so I can fit just a little bit more 30-minute epoxy in it right there on the end. And that'll really help hold it. Alright, now, that's all going to fit just fine. Yep. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mix up just a little bit of 30-minute epoxy. And when I get ready to glue this, I'm going to drop a drop of oil down right here of my tri-flow oil. And I do that so this hinge won't get any epoxy down in it. And So I'm going to go ahead and mix up just a little bit of 30-minute epoxy, and it's pretty important to go ahead and use 30-minute on this stuff here because there's just a lot more strength in 30-minute epoxy. A lot more. So on little things like this, it makes a pretty good size difference. And I will have to wipe a little residue off with probably a paper towel. Again, I'm using Z-Epoxy here, which I believe is made by Zap, and I've had pretty good luck with it. I use Great Plains also. I've used several different kinds. So far, this kind here is probably the kind I've had the best luck with. It seems to probably be the strongest and the easiest to use, and just pretty good stuff here. Now granted, there's not that much difference. Most of it's fine. There's probably not that much difference in strength or anything. But this stuff here seems to work pretty well. And it's awful cold right now. That's why it's taking a long time to run down the bottle. It's actually awful cold in my shop. I've got my heaters going, but it's below freezing outside, and I just turned my heaters on, so it's pretty cold in here. The only reason you can't see my breath is because I got a heater right behind me here. But anyway, that's why my epoxy is running so slow and taking so long to get down to the bottom of my bottle. So, here in about 45 minutes, those will be ready to go. As soon as I can get my epoxy where it'll run down to where I can use it, I will be back. And a set screw, and of course my tail wheel. Okay, I need to find an Allen wrench that fits my set screw. A lot of this stuff's metric, a lot of it's standard. You just have to check, see what you got. Okay, now see that set screw fit the metric one very loosely, so that means that it's more than likely a standard. And these, especially in these little set screws, they have to fit very tightly, because these little set screws, the heads strip out real easy, and you're trying to get them tight. You're trying to get them to really hold on to something. So you really don't want them loose. Okay, that's a standard size. And I'm going to go ahead and flip this over one more time, that way it won't be trying to fall off on me the whole time I'm doing it. Okay, set my tail wheel on there. It's nice and free. Alright, go ahead and set my collar on there, and then I'm going to go ahead and grind a little flat spot. Actually, I'm going to file a little flat spot. I didn't used to do this. I always just tried to get my wheel collars tight enough to hold them, and I really didn't have that much trouble. But I realize now that little flat spot's real easy to do, and will really make a difference on how well that can hold. Will make a huge difference on how well that can hold. So I get an idea where my wheel collar is going to go, and I'm going to take my file. I've got a little hand file set. I'm going to go ahead and make a little flat spot. careful not to damage the wheel. Get out of the way. These little hand file sets, I believe I got this little hand file set at Harbor Freight, but Walmart's has got little file sets, and almost everybody has got a little file set. Hardware stores, a little cheap set that has these tiny little hand files, and they're pretty handy. And I've even got some larger sizes that I use sometimes. Just trying to end up with a little flat spot on there. This is actually pretty hard little piece of metal compared to most of them, which is good. I think it'll last a while. Okay. A little bit more. Okay. I'm getting pretty close. I really want a pretty good sized flat spot on there. Kind of gives a place for that set screw to bite, and it also keeps it from spinning on there. Vibration and use, of course, the tail wheels take a lot of abuse on these little planes. Our flying field, and I'm sure everybody's, is pretty rough. It's you know, you get moles and stuff, and it ends up pretty rough. So these tail wheels really take a beating. So try to take every precaution to keep them on there, and I've really seen very few come off. Even done the other way. But on these little set screws, on these little wheel collars, on these small ones, they really, you can't tighten them very tight, they will strip out. So flat spot and a little Loctite is just kind of the way I deal with that. And it really helps. Okay, try to line that up on my flat spot. Oh, I grabbed the wrong size there. Evidently got another wheel collar in my parts still. Let me find this small one here. There it is. So let me find Allen wrench for it. This small hardware is really hard to tell one size from another. Since that other one was a standard size, I'm going to guess that this one is. And it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little Loctite on it. And of course lining it up with my flat spot. I really kind of positioned my flat spot in a bad area to get to. I should have put it facing backwards. I can turn that and get into it right there. Okay, and of course I want to leave quite a bit of room there for my wheel to turn. I want to make it tight. Alright, now my flat spot. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to torque it down, but remember this is a tiny, tiny little set screw, and you've got tons of torque here, this big long wrench. So that said, you really can't put much pressure on them, and they strip out really, really easy, so be real gentle with it. Okay, I've got that one as tight as I feel like I can get it. I've got it right on my flat spot, and I've got a little bit of movement there on my tail wheel so it can really roll freely. And that's my tail wheel. Alright, and that's my rudder. So, let me go ahead and look in my book and see what they got in mind next. I would guess that they're probably going to want you to start installing the elevators on. And let's see. No, actually they're wanting you to start on the wheel pants and the landing gear, which is fine. That's what I will start on. So let me get a few things picked up, and I might have to get a little better camera angle